In 1959, 9 hikers set out into the Ural Mountains, a remote region of Soviet Russia. None of them would return alive. When their battered and torn tent was discovered by rescuers several weeks later, it was clear that something truly terrifying had befallen them in the frozen wilderness. So what exactly happened to these hikers all those years ago? And is the truth still being hidden by the Russian government? When we think of surviving a hike in the wild, we're often told that the most important thing is to stay warm. If you can keep your body temperature up when stranded somewhere off the beaten path, then you should be fine until help arrives. However, a little over 6 decades ago, a group of experienced hikers tragically lost their lives because they may have done the exact opposite. On February 1959, a group of 9 seasoned hikers led by the well-respected geographer Igor Dyatlov set out to traverse the southern Ural Mountains. For 5 days, the group made their way through heavy snowdrifts and freezing temperatures, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, on the night of February, just as a blizzard raged around them, something strange happened. Rescuers would later find that the group had abandoned their camp in a panic and fled into the snowy wilderness. But why? Dyatlov and his friends were no strangers to the outdoors. In fact, this particular trek was not even expected to be particularly difficult. It was only meant to be a short trip to nearby Otorten, which translates roughly to deadly rocks. But even so, the group did not appear prepared for what lay ahead. While investigators combed through the area for clues, they eventually came across the group's belongings, which were scattered around the tent. Both the tent itself and the surrounding area showed signs of a struggle. However, the most disturbing detail was that despite the freezing temperatures, several pairs of boots and warm clothing were left abandoned nearby. This indicated that the hikers must have been in a state of panic when they abandoned their camp and fled into the freezing cold. But where did they go? Where did they go? The first sign of the hikers' bodies was on February, when 2 skiers discovered a man's body lying face down in the snow. At first, they assumed the man had simply become unwell while hiking, but upon closer inspection, it became clear that he had died under mysterious circumstances. Not only was the man dressed in nothing but 1 shirt and trousers, but he also had no boots on, and his underwear was pulled up to his chest. The unfortunate hiker had clearly run outside in terror, only to die from exposure soon after. A second man's body was found the following day, and it was in a similar state of undress. He also appeared to have suffered a traumatic injury to his head, with part of his skull completely fractured. While the location of the first 2 bodies was relatively close to the abandoned campsite, the third body was found almost 7 miles away. As rescuers continued their grim search, they began to piece together the full horror of what had unfolded in the frozen wilderness. The 4th body they found belonged to Yuri Yudin, who was the only member of the group to survive. However, although he was alive, he wasn't much help to investigators. Yudin claimed to have become separated from the group 2 days earlier due to illness. He said he had woken up during the night to the sound of screams and had gone outside to investigate. But he was greeted by such a horrifying sight that he fled back to his tent and never saw the rest of the group again. Although Yudin insisted he had nothing to do with the other hikers' deaths, many people were skeptical. After all, why had he conveniently become ill right as the group met their end? However, the remaining 5 bodies proved Yudin's innocence. The group consisted of 4 women and 1 man. Upon examination, it became clear that they had died in a very different manner to Dyatlov and his companions. Each of the 5 had suffered horrific injuries, with 2 of the women having completely fractured skulls. One of the women had also had her tongue torn out, while another's eyes were gouged from their sockets. Yet when their bodies were found, they had no external wounds, which ruled out assault or animal attack. It quickly became clear to investigators that this was no ordinary case. There had been no avalanche, landslide, or rockfall that could have caused such catastrophic injuries. So what exactly had happened? Was there perhaps something unnatural at play? To make matters even stranger, traces of radiation were later found on some of the hikers' clothes. At the time, nuclear fallout from the Chernobyl incident was still fresh in people's minds, leading many to believe that the hikers had perhaps stumbled across a secret testing site. The Soviet Union was known to carry out secret military tests in the Ural Mountains, so this theory seemed plausible. However, the official Soviet investigation would come to a different conclusion. Despite admitting that some of the injuries could not have been self-inflicted, they labeled the cause of death as a compelling natural force. They suggested that an avalanche had struck the tent, causing the hikers to flee into the freezing weather. However, there was no evidence of an avalanche, and this did not explain the horrific injuries. Several witnesses also came forward to claim that they had seen strange orange lights in the sky above the mountains at the time of the incident. This led to speculation that the hikers may have witnessed a UFO and that this could have caused their deaths. Indeed, it has been suggested that the Soviet government knew the truth of what happened, but covered it up to prevent panic among the populace. After all, it wouldn't be the first time that extraterrestrials had paid a visit to Earth. Could this be proof that aliens exist? Maybe. The group may have been unlucky enough to stumble into a secret military testing site. This would explain the radiation, the lack of answers, and the extreme secrecy around the incident. Others, however, insist that there is something more sinister going on here. According to some, this case is far from being a simple accident or a military cover-up. Instead, it was something far more terrifying, something paranormal, something beyond human comprehension. Whatever the truth, the Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. More than 6 decades on from the tragedy, the question still remains, what really happened to those 9 hikers in the frozen wilderness? Did they meet a tragic end when the tent collapsed in an avalanche, causing them to flee into the freezing cold and ultimately die from exposure? Or was this merely a cover story designed to hide the truth from the public? Perhaps the hikers encountered a secret military test or even an alien spacecraft, leading to their mysterious and untimely demise. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think happened to the hikers? As always, your thoughts are welcome in the comments. Thank you for watching. Until next time.